Recording has started. Thank you. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nicole Jordan, and we want to welcome you to the Woodlawn Descendants Conference, which is being hosted by the Woodlawn Cemetery Perpetual Care Board of Directors and the Woodlawn Collaborative Project. My name is Nicole Jordan. I'm the president of the Washington, D.C. Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and we are proud of our association with the Woodlawn Cemetery Perpetual Care Board of Directors. The Woodlawn Collaborative Project represents 17 chapters of Alpha Kappa Alpha and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, working together to preserve the sacred burial space of our ancestors. The purpose of this conference is to bring together descendants of those buried at the Woodlawn Cemetery to talk, to learn together, to grow together as we do everything that's possible to make sure that the final resting place for your fathers and your mothers and your grandparents and your aunts and uncles and cousins continue to exist. It is our desire to build a community of caring relatives who are concerned about their ancestors and are willing to assist us in every way possible. We hope that the discussion here tonight will inspire you in a positive way to join us to keep this cemetery alive and well. To bring greetings first, let me first call Mr. Lawrence Davin, Liaison Ward 7 of the Mayor's Office on Community Relations and Services. Mr. Davin?
Well, hello, everyone. Hello, my name is Lawrence Davin. I'm the Ward 7 liaison in the mayor's office. And on behalf of our great mayor, Muriel E. Bowser, I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to be your guest here tonight. Well, I'm going to just go ahead and jump straight into it. Only hidden gems like Woodlawn Cemetery can be found in places like Ward 7. Right. For years, as a kid growing up, I would pass the cemetery all the time. I'm not even knowing. I went to the KIP right there on Benning Road, and I would pass it every day, not knowing who was laid to rest on those sacred grounds, right? People that I learned about in college, John Mercer Langston, who helped stand up Howard Law School, right? Or Blanche Bruce, our first Black senator to serve a full term, right? When I stopped to think about this, these are the folks that our children in our community should be familiar with, right? These are the folks that our children should learn about and that our community should learn about so we have a better idea of who we are and where we come from. And we're lucky enough to have this space in our own backyard. So on behalf of Mayor Bowser, I just really want to thank all of you for putting this together, right? For caring about Woodlawn, this little part of Ward 7, and making sure the memory of it and the people who are buried there live on. And I do want to say this. I know it's no easy feat. I know people like Mr. Moore or Miss Kinder are hard to come by, and the many others who make this work possible, right? But it takes the people like you who give selflessly of your time and resources to make sure historical pieces like this really live on forever, to make sure our folks know what has happened here. So I'm looking forward to listening to the conversation. Once again, thank you so much for caring about Woodlawn. And you guys have a great night. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
And thank you so much for being here with us and working with us through this partnership that we have. Before we continue, I do want to just take a moment to greet some of our special guests. You all are special, but we definitely want to take time to recognize we have on the call the 22nd National President of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Reverend Dr. Gwendolyn E. Boyd. And we also have, thank you, Sir Boyd, for joining us. And we also, I think, may have the first Vice President, International First Vice President of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Mrs. Charlotte Wilson-Jack. So wanted to take the time and thank you for joining us as we are doing this very important project. We will now move on to our next speaker. We'll have Mr. Omar Eaton Martin. I'm going to start that again. I'm reading too fast. We will now move on to our next speaker, who is Mr. Omar Eaton Martinez, Senior Vice President for Historical Sites at the National Trust for Historic Preservations.
Greetings, everyone. Good evening. As stated, I'm the Senior Vice President for Historic Sites at the National Trust for Historic Preservation. I've been at that job now for 18 months. I get to govern, guide, and partner 28 historic sites across the country. I wanted to speak a little bit about preservation as a tool for social justice. This is absolutely a mechanism to be able to lift up the stories that our historic sites, our African burial grounds, our heritage areas can tell in preserving our Black history, culture, and legacy. And a lot of my work, what I've done in the recent past, has been driven by a very specific and essential question. And that question is, what kind of ancestor will you be? And so we have an opportunity to really challenge ourselves and how we connect with our legacy. How do we continue to do this work to really raise awareness around Black history, Black culture, and Black lives? Preservationists today are called upon to support the efforts of descendants who are protecting, preserving, and interpreting historic places. We really got to think about different terms that we use in our work today. Things like nothing about us without us. This is a phrase borrowed from activists who really sought for justice for disabled or differently abled brothers and sisters. And it's a tenet for all of us who really want to stand on the truth of telling the full American story. I harken back to 2018, when the National Trust for Historic Preservation, specifically under the leadership of the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund, brought together a group of scholars, thought leaders, and thinkers to create what they called the Interpreting Slavery with Descendant Communities. This happened at the sacred space of James Madison's Montpelier, where James Madison, one of our past US presidents, held hundreds of slaves in captivity in order to do labor at that site. And this rubric, in its most fundamental form, really started to describe what a descendant community is. And, a descendant community is a group of people whose ancestors were enslaved at a particular site, but it can transcend that limited definition. The descendant community can include those whose ancestors were enslaved not only at a particular site, but also throughout a surrounding region, reflecting the fact that family ties often cross plantation boundaries. A descendant community can also welcome those who feel connected to the work the institution is doing, whether or not they know of a genealogical connection. But also a descendant community can include, all kinds of different stories that have been marginalized throughout the years. When we created that rubric at James Madison's Montpelier, it has taken on great new life. It is not just used by descendants who are connected or have affinity towards a site of enslavement. We now have people who use this rubric and have tweaked it, who are telling the stories of those who were incarcerated in Japanese internment camps during World War II. We have those who are considered using this, who are descendants of those who had their ancestors removed and forced into American Indian boarding school. So this is really a tool for justice, for us to lift up the work of the marginalized who've always been undertold or completely erased. One of the powerful things that came from this particular rubric was the idea of structural parity at the governance level. So an exemplary structural parity occurs when members of the descendant community are represented and empowered at every level of the institution: board, senior leadership, supervisors, staff, and volunteers. Representation has to go on beyond tokenism. These positions are invested with power and authority. Additionally, the Senate committee serves as a standing board committee in targeted internships and mentorships and outreach and partnerships, specifically around with institutions that focus on communities of color like HBCUs, tribal colleges, things like programs like African American Studies programs and other different professional societies that exist to ensure a continuous descendant talent or academic pipeline. The history of the enslaved community and the voices of their descendants are fully integrated into all the institution's materials and programs, including research, preservation, archaeology, and interpretation. So I'd like to complete my portion of this by just sharing another favorite quote of mine from Dr. Cornel West, and that is, "Love is what justice looks like in public."
Mhm.
Let's love one another, let's love each other, and let's push forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that greeting. Thank you for that information, because it's great for us to understand and get context of why we're here today. So we'll now introduce our speaker for this inaugural Descendants Conference. And I am so happy to be able to do this. I've known Ms. Fager for many, many, many years, and she's always been someone who was committed to the community, committed to making sure that our people and our culture is there. She was my first boss as my first internship when I was in college, many, many, many years ago. So it's wonderful how the circle comes back. Lisa Fager is a woman who spent many years in historic preservations of cemeteries. She's an outstanding community activist with many years of experience at the grassroots level and with a keen understanding of the plight of African American cemeteries in the United States. She was recognized by the New York Times newspapers for her achievement and her ability to motivate and mobilize communities around this issue. So I present to you Ms. Lisa Fager, Executive Director of the Black Georgetown Foundation. Lisa?
Ooh, I'm like, who is that? She sounds great, girl. I was like, y'all be writing it up. First of all, it is amazing in how full circle we can all come. She was an intern at Discovery Channel. Oh my goodness, it was so long ago. And here I am in preservation. And just to let y'all know, I don't have a lot of experience. I know it seems like I do, but I've only been executive director for 5 years. I'm the first executive director that the nonprofit has. And the Black Georgetown Foundation is our doing business as name because the original name or the formal name is Mount Zion Female Union Band Historic Memorial Park. Because you know we love long names, y'all. And so I was like, we can't put that in the newspapers and everything else. I'm gonna have to shorten that up. But I represent the nonprofit that oversees the two cemeteries. They have two different histories and historically have just been named Mount Zion Cemetery, but they're actually two. And I do have a presentation. And so what I wanted to do this evening was just give you a little background on, yes, Paul Jennings. I see somebody talking about Paul Jennings. Franklin Jennings is in the cemetery. Yes. So we have so many connections, okay? And I don't know if you all know this, but there are only 4 historic Black cemeteries left in DC that identify as cemeteries still, with meaning they might have a marker or two, and the land is not going to be developed and I pretty much are saved. So 3 of those 4 cemeteries are in Georgetown. I oversee 2 of them. There's another one over by Chain Bridge Road, which is called Union Burial of Georgetown, and it is about 1 acre. Probably, has a lot of connections to our 2 cemeteries and is overseen by a descendant of the Butler family. So, and it's only open 1 day a year, Memorial Day, which is a very special day for African Americans in cemeteries. And so I wanted to share kind of like what our plight was, or a little bit about our cemetery, because when I visited Woodlawn, and I'll try to intersperse my visit to Woodlawn 2 weeks ago, which was very spiritual. And I should have put some pictures of Woodlawn in there, but of course, many of you probably already know what it looks like. But we have many of the same problems, except Woodlawn is the largest of the 4 historic Black cemeteries left in DC, and it is just amazing. I have so many questions, so many things I would love to help you all start getting involved with. So I'm going to start this presentation and give you a little bit background, and then we can compare some things with both sites, and we can ask questions and all of that. Let's see. So give me a sec. Wow. Okay. Look, got a little fancy here. So this is really what our cemetery looked like in the 1970s before the markers were moved. I think you all had the same problem where the markers aren't all on or where they should be on the bodies. So these two cemeteries, Mount Zion started off actually as an integrated cemetery by the Methodist Church. It was both blacks and whites in the church, both free and enslaved, and they were all allowed to be buried in the cemetery together. It wasn't really until so 1816, the Mount Zion, the black people of the white church, which was then called Montgomery Methodist, left that church. They were like, we stick to these rules here. And in 1816, they got their own church. Is the first black church in DC, first black congregation. And so they were also, I'll show you, this one side is the Mount Zion side, and they were purchased in 1808. The black church members left the white church, but they stayed sharing the property. So even though they had their different churches, they shared. And then 1842 was a group of free black women who purchased the Female Union Band Society cemetery, and that is the like the other half now of this cemetery. All encompassing is about 3 acres. We had some land taken by eminent domain in 1931, but in 1849, Oak Hill Cemetery, which is as big as Woodlawn, 22 acres, was open in 1849, and then the white parishioners started to dig up their family, and that's how we became black. So most of the white folks took their family members out. There's several white families that are still in the cemetery, one having abolitionist ties. The others are in other cemeteries around the city that were called white only. The other thing that's special about this is that we were part of the Underground Railroad. I know a lot of people probably, heard a lot of stories about Mount Zion Church being part of the Underground Railroad. Well, this vault has been here since the mid 1800s. Of course, it had to be assessed because, folks came in. We can believe George Washington cut down a cherry tree, but we can't believe Black folks had part in the Underground Railroad. So, but all things were verified. We know that this vault was put in place prior to 1850. William Still himself, the abolitionist out of Philadelphia, wrote about people hiding here in this cemetery and in this vault. The things that we focus on, or what I focus mostly on in our preservation efforts, are, of course, the land and the trees, which takes up a lot of efforts because I feel like I'm constantly saving the land. And I feel like you guys probably are the same thing. It's about maintenance. It's about making sure the markers are seen, are found, lifted, cared for. And in doing so, you find artifacts. The grave markers are also, we call them artifacts as well. And then history. I don't get to spend a lot of time on history, telling the stories of the people. And I think that is it's really important to do so because that's what brings people in to your cemetery, is telling them who's there. And one of the things that's so special about Woodlawn is that you guys were established after 1874, and that's when they started death records. Prior to that, so there's a lot of people, we're not sure who's in the cemetery, in our particular cemetery, because of death records. And like I said, constantly saving the land. And just to, we have these designations, but I will tell you, When it comes to Black folks, like this National Registry of Historic Places is supposed to kind of put you under some umbrella, I guess, help save you. Now, it did save us from the developers. But in other areas, it didn't. So come 2021, literally the federal government, the National Park Service, and the DC government in their planning were redoing the Rock Creek Park trail, the one that was taken by eminent domain, and they had nobody out here. And of course, just like Woodlawn, that historically, we found out that they dumped tons of dirt on top of the cemetery. So the land that they took by eminent domain literally is just covered with trash, dirt. And they tried to tell us, like, you know, whatever they were digging would all be trash, except if you see this medicine bottle here, and a little spoon was also found, and it all relates back to 19th century. And it was a custom, particularly in our cemetery, to put things on the graves that people might have left behind or needed. And that included medicine bottles, spoons, things they liked during their lifetime, that had been a fan from the church, all kinds of things. And so, like I said, our biggest challenge is that the cemetery is flooded by water that is directly, it was directed intentionally by the city into the cemetery. There's no open water drains that'll take the water in. So we suffer from erosion, a lot of dips in our cemetery because of the waters that are directed. You could see to the left over here is Oak Hill. They have not only do they not have flooding, they do not have any weeds. And that's, of course, because they were also started with appropriations, you know, because a lot of white cemeteries received, you know, government appropriations when they were established. And so some of these things were avoided. We were able to get 1.6 million from the city, working with our city council person for 2023 to address these waters coming in, because there's nothing we can do with the land until you address this, right? So we're working on it. And these are some of the people that we know of that are in this cemetery. So Clement Morgan himself is not in there, because Clement Morgan was the first, he grew up in Georgetown and was the first first person to receive a Harvard undergrad and law degree. And he was a contemporary of Du Bois. People for years thought he was in the cemetery. He was also the first Black alderman, and he was something else. Oh, founder of the NAACP. Actually, this is his parents, and they were founders of Shiloh Baptist Church, both his mother and his father. And I found several more Shiloh Baptist founders in the church who all came out of, who were all enslaved in Virginia before they came to DC. And some other folks, William Custis Colston, he is both the nephew / grandson of Martha Washington, but his mother was an enslaved woman, although there's things that people like. Then there's Eliza Williams. She lived to be 111 years old, and she met George Washington, who told her as a young girl that she was sickly and most likely to die early. Joke on him, right? She died. So I just, that was a little bit about Mount Zion and the Female Union Band Society and some of our challenges. Now, when I got to Woodlawn, the first thing I want to do is find your markers. Okay, y'all have 31,000 people that have were buried in that cemetery, and you have just a handful of markers. So one of the things that happened to us during COVID is that we were told to follow the daffodils. And if you've ever seen a utility pole, this is a skinny steel pole. We went around and followed the daffodils, hitting around the daffodils with the pole. and found over 100 grave markers. I can see in your cemetery all the people, all the dips you see in they are all people. And so they are all people. And so I would love to figure out where your markers are, because I feel like they're underneath your dirt. And it would be great, you know, who knows, maybe we get the Washington, D.C. rookie, the cops, you know, because that's the other way how they search for people, use those polls, just, you know, just the trainees. So we go up the cemetery and just start seeing what we hit. Would be amazing. And so and there are just things that, you know, we can do. And I would love to talk to you all. One of the things I would love to work with you guys on Descendants and the collaborative is putting a policy piece together around all 4 cemeteries. We are not a state, right? We're the District of Columbia. And what you'll find is happening in Maryland and Virginia is that they have redirected funding to help these African-American cemeteries. We haven't had anything in DC that, you know, that it will help us. And we need to do it. We need to focus on the city, and we also need to focus on the federal government. We are here in DC. And, you know, I have people, ancestors of, you have congressional members, I have the children of congressional members in our cemeteries, okay? And they need to be, if anybody needs respect, it's the people in all these cemeteries. If anybody needs reparations, they're the ones that actually were part of free labor, them and their parents and grandparents. You know, you have many people who were formerly enslaved in your cemetery as well, or the children of. And so it's just so important for us to get together. And I want us to think wide. I know sometimes we put this, you know, on the descendant community, but it's okay to widen our net, because there are people, you know, that love helping us figure out DC history, because the folks in all of these cemeteries, you know, really help this nation, you know, grow. Remember, DC is an experiment. There were congressional members that were anti-slavery, for slavery, and they couldn't get anything done in their home states. Okay, but you know, everything was tried here in DC. Knowing that Black men voted in 1867, that's 3 years before the 15th Amendment. I mean, we got stories to tell, and we got to bring in our communities. And I'm so excited. Woodlawn is in a Black community, and you know, it's different than ours, because even though we're in a really wealthy Georgetown, that didn't save us. We just look like a very small version of you all, you know, honestly, with tumble down. But what you don't have is crazy weeds. We have every invasive weed you can find where we are, because we're beside Rock Creek. But there are these things. So I'm going to stop there. And I am open. And like I said, I am, you know, I'm a servant leader here, y'all. So you can use me.
Thank you, Lisa. I think it was good to see and hear kind of about your cemetery and see the connections between yours and ours and what's happening in the Black cemetery community. So to see the historical context, to see the connections. So thank you with that. Sometimes you think you're on an island on your own. And so now we're to a point that really this is for you. So this will be an opportunity for our participants to have a discussion with those who are connected, either descendants or people connected through. So for this next section, we have our moderator for this conference will be one of our sisters of Alpha Kappa Alpha, Raven L. Hill. She is the president of the Xi Omega chapter. She's going to lead kind of moderated discussion and also a Q&A with our guests. So Raven, and this over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Nicole. And I just want to acknowledge you and the women of Delta Sigma Theta for your continued partnership with the Woodlawn Collaborative Project, for seeing beyond sorority colors and sharing our commitment to legacy. So thank you. And I'd also like to give special greetings to the International First Vice President of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Charlotta Wilson-Jacks, who has joined us this evening. And I see my sister president, Arnitra Duckett from Rho Mu Omega Chapter, who's also here, and I want to give greetings in absentia to Tracy Harrison from Xi Zeta Omega Chapter, the third chapter that's involved in the Woodlawn Collaborative Project. Well, we heard so much great information from our speakers, and Lisa, you said use you, so we're going to start with you just to throw out the question, but I do want to remind our descendants that tonight is for you. Please feel free to ask questions. If you could raise your hand or put your question in the chat, we will address it to one of our panelists. Okay, and we'll start with Marion Woodfork. I think it's Simmons.
Simmons, yes.
Yes.
Hi, thank
Mhm.
you. So I was looking through my email. In 2016, I met a person who was affiliated with the Woodlawn Cemetery, and she told me that the Perpetual Care Association had received a grant to digitize the records. So I was checking to see what was the status of that? Was that done? Is it complete? Are the records available to the public and that sort of thing?
So we have Tony White Richardson from the Woodlawn Cemetery Perpetual Care Association. Tony, can you address that question?
Sure. Let me say this to you. We have not found that to be true. There was some money given. And at the time, I was not in this position. I was just coming on board a little after that. They were given money to do some digging of that and landscaping of the land. But we didn't see where they were giving any money to digitize records. And I can tell you, they have not been digitized. However, if you go to Howard University, in the Moreland Spingarn collection, you will find that they have the records there, and you can go through those records. And that's where we've been blessed that there are any records that exist. Because as previously stated by Lisa, it was very hard they didn't even start keeping records until a certain period. And just lucky enough that this cemetery has some records. They're not 100%, but that's where the records are. But the money was not received to my knowledge, but I'm telling you, I came after 2016 to do anything other than to do some where you penetrate the ground and find out where the different bodies are buried and where there might be headstones, which let me throw this in there, even though you didn't ask. 5 tons of dirt was put into Woodlawn some time ago. So that may have covered up headstones and a lot of other things, but that's just a sidebar, FYI, that there were 5 tons of dirt put into Woodlawn so they could level, to make it walkable, to level the ground. But I have not seen any records that show that there was any money given for digital records.
Okay, thank you. And I have one off topic. Tony, did you go to GW?
Yes, I did.
Oh, we have connection from long time ago.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hit me up, okay?
Okay.
Okay, there's a question in the chat about whether the cemetery books are now at Howard.
Yes.
Okay.
That's where we're working from, the cemetery books at Howard.
Okay. All right. A question about the estimated cost to maintain landscaping at Woodlawn and how we might get a line item in the DC government budget for these costs.
DC government man, are you there?
I know he's not, but if perhaps one of our panelists could discuss the limitations of private cemeteries getting public funds.
Lisa, did you want to go there first and I go there
I
second?
could go there first, and then, so just so y'all know, Omar, he's not just my friend. We went to college together, like undergrad. So like I really know him. So, but he's also worked for numerous other folks. Like he speak on this I'll speak on from my personal So when our cemetery was going through it back in the day, the whole deal was, let's get the Park Service to take it over because, hey, we're in Rock Creek Park. Hey, that makes sense. No, they wouldn't do it. They refused to. They're like, no, we're the federal government. We can't do that. And at the time, I think it was Fauntleroy, whoever was before Norton, was a champion of Black cemeteries around the city. And so he went through, tried to go through Congress, and they were just adamant about not helping. The city at one time did allow their summer program kids to come and the Marion Berry Project to mow the lawn, and they did it for years up until the 90s. And then all of a sudden there was some, I don't know, something happened. Nothing did happen at the cemetery, but something happened, I guess. And they were like, yeah, we can't let them, work on, I don't know why. So they just stopped it. So that stopped a lot of the volunteer care. Somebody can answer how much it costs. It costs us. And I only have about an acre to mow. We're three acres, but only an acre is cleared to mow the grass. That's $600 a month. And that's, that's one guy.
Mhm.
And I tried to, matter of fact, I went through a program in Southeast that, helped returning citizens and train them. And so I really wanted, kind of get somebody, and it was a gentleman, and then he passed away, but he left the business to his 20-something-year-old son. And that's who's been doing it for me for the last 4 years. You all have a lot of land. But the good thing is you're not suffering from that invasive weeds like we are. Like literally, they're telling us we can't get rid of Japanese knotweed unless we invest 3 years and inject each stalk. Okay. So
Lisa, something you just said, and I just want you to repeat it again. You said how many acres you all have?
how many acres do we mow?
Yeah.
1 acre.
And it costs you how much a month?
$600.
Multiply that by 22. I'll even be nice to say 20. Folks,
I know. That's
it
why I
costs
said I can't even
quite
imagine.
a bit of money. That's
lot.
why we need volunteers. We got an estimate from a landscaper, and the number came in to straighten out that cemetery, asked for $80,000. We have paperwork to that effect. But then after they straighten it out, you have to maintain it, because God loves to send you rain. And when he sends you rain, the grass keeps growing, and so you're constantly in a position of having to maintain between a certain period, constant cutting. And sometimes in DC, summers can be wonderfully nothing but watershed. So you can go
Yes.
from mowing a lawn every 3 weeks to almost mowing a lawn every week, depending on the amount of rain that we get in this area. So it is very expensive. How do we maintain it? Volunteers giving us money. God knows, volunteers that have sent checks. And Woodlawn Cemetery Perpetual Care Association is a 501c3 tax-deductible organization in good standing in the District of Columbia. And so thus, we welcome, and I need to say this now as the Vice President, any donations anybody on this line wants to make, you make it out to them, because all of it counts, all of it helps. And as you see, that's a lot of money. So it will not be wasted. It's just to keep it mowed. The other thing that I think people don't understand and take into account, some things need to be replaced. We have a sign that needs to be kind of updated. It's been there a minute, needs a little work. And it was just up until maybe 4 or 5 years ago that we got the United States flag and the district government flag and the POW flag put up. Up till then, there was no flags in that space. And thanks to some donations and the Advisory Neighborhood Commission in that area, we were able to get that done. So I hope that answered the question on how much this can cost. And Lisa, I'm glad you said what you said.
Thank you, Tony. We have 2 questions, one from Jeff, followed by Barbara Early Allen.
Okay. My name is Jeff. Actually, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Okay. How you doing, Mrs. Richardson? First, I wanted to say it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I'm in the garage waiting for my daughter. She's at ballet, so if I go out, I'm very sorry. But just wanted to say I'm so excited to be on this call of the Descendants Conference. And I grew up right behind Woodlawn Cemetery. My mom still have the house there. And so, I met Miss Richardson a while back. We went off to the cemetery. We're a filmmaker. I'm a filmmaker. Me and my partners, we have crew of 5 people. And of course, growing up behind a cemetery, you're going to see what's there. And from over the years, I'm 56 now, so you can just imagine how long it's been. Um, I still love going there. I passed Benning Road. I grew up, went to, Fletcher Johnson, went to Woodson, and then Eastern High School. So I grew up right there on Benning Road. So to see it, and then when Miss Richardson told me, who were buried there, I was just like, oh my goodness, this is just so great. So to actually to help with that, and my partners, we talked about it. We want to do sort of and this is where I just got to get information from you and anybody else. We want to do a series, and it's going to be set in Woodlawn, and it's more of a TV series. So we're working on a treatment for that, and once we're done, it's going to be about another maybe 3 or 4 months that we can submit it and see what you think. Everybody who's in charge, Ms. Richardson, yourself, and it will tell the stories of the people who are buried there through the eyes of kids who moved into that area and wandered into the cemetery and figuring out, hey, what is this? So we're working on treatment for that, and I just love of what's going on right now and the history, and I guess we could connect Woodlawn with the other cemeteries, but I just wanted to say that it's good to see what's going on. And if we do get a series, we get a grant or we get some funding for it, the money that that's generated from that will go into Woodlawn. And also, they had a little center there that's not there anymore. I think it was a center when you come in, that it can be built, not as big, but something else as a welcome center. So we have ideas that we can help, put the cemetery back on the map because, it's historically, Black cemetery. So we have a lot of ideas, and we would love to help in any kind of way, and we would love to do this. So when we finish with the treatment, I would love to submit it and to the proper people to look at it and see what they think. And then, we own a body shop in DC off of Marionbury Avenue, which was Good Oak Road, right there in historic Anacostia. So we are a CBE. We've been there for 30 years. And Ms. Richardson, it's good to see you.
Good to see
So
you.
we've been there for 30 years. So we own the body shop. We're still there. We bought another one off of 210. We're going to open that up pretty soon. But my heart is in filmmaking along with my other partners. And for us to tell the stories of the people there, it is just unbelievable. I mean, I'm so excited. Every time I talk about it, me and my partners, we just get so excited. So we will want to submit the treatment. And also, DC government has grants that we can get money to produce it. So once we get it done, and then, if it's big, if it's going to be picked up from somebody huge or big, the money will go back to Woodlawn Cemetery and the other ones, because this is, I mean, like you say, Mr. Richardson, the gate, I mean, that says a lot when you pass Bennett Road and you see that gate right there. I mean, just imagine what you can do and build and add to it, a brand new gate, a welcome center. So we have a lot of ideas. And, when we walked through that cemetery and you let us in that day, I mean, the feeling came over myself in Rome. So I just wanted to get on the call and hear what it was about. And I really want to get a lot of the information. And I see that we can get it. So that's great. And I'm not going to take too much time. And I just wanted to say thank you. And this is great. I'm just looking forward. And Ms. Richardson, I guess you'll probably be the one who we can submit the treatment, and then you can just take it from there. Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jeff. If we could now move to Barbara Early Allen. Ms. Allen?
Thank you. Tony, I think you should let the group know about the cadre of volunteers who have come to the cemetery to help clean up. Recently, we uncovered the burial site of one of the founders of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and we are still looking for your second founder's burial site.
Let me say this. I'm going to, at this point, because I'm wearing so many hats tonight, I think everybody needs to be clear. I'm the vice president of the Woodlawn Cemetery Perpetual Care Association, but I also am a member of the Washington, D.C. alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. And as you see, I have another logo in my background of another organization I belong to. It's one of those things where I'm going to pass this on to Marjorie Kennard, who's the coordinator for the collaborative. Marjorie?
I'm right here. I have not left. I'm just taking it all in. Now, I don't know if there was a question that came up or whether Barbara just wanted to say something about volunteers that we do have. We start our cleanups in April every year. We have our cleanups and we do April, May, June, July, August, all through the summer up to October. And after October, we stop because fall comes in and then winter, and then we go around and start up again in April. I will talk more about that later. So I think there are some other questions that the descendants might have.
Yes, thank you, Marjorie. Descendants, as a reminder, if you could please drop your contact information in the chat. The Woodlawn Collaborative Project does have an oral history initiative, and the committee would love to interview you. I see Ms. Simmons has her hand raised again.
Yes, I had another question. It was kind of on the topic you were just speaking of. So, she mentioned getting money, she mentioned getting help. So like I said, I was contacting someone in 2016 because I found out I had ancestors buried at the cemetery. And I would be interested in volunteering, helping with cleanup and that sort of thing. So I'm wondering, what type of outreach have you all done to reach out to let members of the community or other genealogy groups know that you exist, and solicit volunteers and that sort of thing? And if someone is interested in participating, how can they go about doing that?
Well, I think I'd like to respond to that. We've reached out. We've been on the TV, we've been on the radio, we've been in newspapers, we've talked to people at various churches. I mean, we've been the gamut. And of course, with COVID, not as many people go to churches now, so they probably don't get the message. And we do have a community awareness committee with the collaborative, and we do all kinds of things. So that's one of the reasons for having this Descendants Conference, to even get the word out among descendants so that you can help us carry the word.
Okay, and the person said to put out contact. Should we send it to a specific person on this,
So if you see in the chat, there's a link to a contact form.
Oh,
if you can get your information there.
Okay.
Okay. Tony,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. We have a website, woodlawndc.org. You could put anything and everything in that website and we will answer you. Sometimes right away, sometimes not right away, because everybody that does this is volunteer. So we're working through timelines. but please use the website, woodlawndc.org. Okay.
Thank you, Tony.
Mhm.
I don't see any questions in the chat for now. I have a question.
There
for
was
all-
one question in the chat
Yeah.
you didn't ask.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Somebody asked if there was any white people buried in the cemetery in Woodlawn.
Yes, there are. Can I tell you who they are? No. But there are. I do know they are. But very small portion. Let me see if I can walk you through a little bit of Black cemetery history in DC. Lisa, I'm gonna need your help just a little bit. If people know where Heckinger Mall is in DC, Benning Road, Bladensburg Road, there used to be a cemetery there. And when they came through with development, they moved some of the bodies from there, and that was supposed to be a Black cemetery. They moved some of those bodies over to Woodlawn. But across from Woodlawn used to be a cemetery called Payne, and they came in and they built a junior high school there. The city built on that land and built a junior high school there. Those bodies got moved to Harmony, but the Harmony in Maryland. And the Harmony in Maryland used to be Columbia Harmony in DC. So Columbia Harmony in DC got moved to Maryland to Harmony. Some of the people at Payne went to Harmony. Then on top of that, you had people from Graceland Cemetery, that where Heckinger was, moved to Woodlawn, and some from Walter Pierce, which was a part of it was a Quaker cemetery, and part was a Black cemetery.
That's
and
right.
in all that movement, believe it or not, some white folks got buried over in Woodlawn.
There's a comment.
But I can't tell you which one where.
Well, there's a comment in the chat that's in section K.
Section, very good. Who's that?
It's from Yvonne Leiser.
Okay. It's good because I couldn't tell you where section K is. You must come visit. You have to come visit Woodlawn, please. I invite everybody on this Descendants Conference. If you're in the area, come visit Woodlawn. I just want to say this something. I saw, hi cousin, Dr. John R. Francis is my second great grandfather. Absolutely. And he is buried there.
Great.
And that's who Francis Junior High School was named after.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tony, can you remind us when Woodlawn Cemetery is open for visitors?
Okay. I'm going to tell you to go to the website, but I can give you the days. Okay. We'll start off with Emancipation Day, which is always April 16th, and whenever that falls on. Emancipation Day. After Emancipation Day, we have Memorial Day. After Memorial Day, we go into Juneteenth, we've added. From Juneteenth, we then go into Labor Day. And from Labor Day, we go into Veterans Day.
Okay, thank you. So I have a question for the panel. Regardless of whether we have loved ones buried at Woodlawn or another historical like cemetery, how can we remain connected to the issue itself?
Well, okay. And I'm gonna let Marjorie jump in as well. For us, we found that if you go to the website, we're much better able to keep up with things because several of us have access to that website. We don't have an office. So there's no place to go, come and visit and see and do business. We don't have a phone other than my own personal phone or Margie's own personal phone. But that website serves as our conduit to connect to the community and have information. We're able to connect with people based on their website. People receive emails to come to this conference because I was able to go in there and grab the email off that website. So I do encourage, highly suggest that you go to the woodlawndc.org website and contact us. I promise we will get back with you.
I would like to say this, and it's really commendable, that the members of the board of directors at Woodlawn are descendants themselves. There is absolutely no paid staff. So when you think about the fact that volunteers are running Woodlawn with no office, no phone, little money at all, it's just pure guts and love. That's what it is. And that's why we need you, descendants out there, because we all have to stick together to keep Woodlawn open. Do you know that the developers are there looking all the time? They have to be turned away all the time. And they, on those sprawling hills, they could have all kinds of condos and things, and they would think nothing of moving those graves without hesitation. So we want to keep Woodlawn, we want to preserve it, and we need you, the community of descendants, as well as those who are interested in Woodlawn Cemetery.
I just wanted to chime in real quick. I think there's an opportunity for Woodlawn, for Black Georgetown, and for other cemetery sites to put in a nomination if they haven't already in the past for 11 Most Endangered, which is a huge advocacy program and initiative. It's been going on for about 38 years at the National Trust. I mean, some of the impactful things that have come out of that was the Carr G. Woodson home, which was then taken over by the National Park Service and soon to be open. So it's an advocacy program. I mean, it doesn't come with grant money. Let me just be clear with that. But it does come with a lot of advocacy. They do a full media press for the sites to get chosen. And there's been a few Black cemeteries across the country that have been added to those lists over the years. This year, it's already happening, so they're going to announce the 2024 folks May 1st, but they'll start the process again in the fall for 2025. So if people want more information about that, I did put my email in the chat, and I can get you in front of the right folks. That's not part of my purview. I'm usually part of the committee that reviews them, but that's not under my department. I don't manage that, but I can get you in contact with the folks that do. And of course, if you are looking for funding, there are funding opportunities with the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund. And there's also some other sacred places grant programs through the National Trust under our Preservation Services and Outreach department. And again, I'd be happy to be a conduit for you on those two opportunities.
And I just want to add, since we're talking about opportunities, the city, we've applied and have received many grants from the Commission on Arts and DC Humanities. And so I would definitely, because they are 501c3, and if you are a DC resident, you can also get monies as an individual. Particularly, they're really focused on oral histories and storytelling, which is perfect for a descendant community, because you get paid to tell these stories and figure out how to, connect the dots. One of the things we're working on is to give away our database that we actually developed through a grant through the Commission on Arts. And we have like 155 fields in the background, because we want to, connect all the dots, including like if ancestors, like a lot of our folks are like Methodist and Catholic, and even though they were married, they're buried in different cemeteries. So we like to put a little note over here, all the information we can. And so we want to be able to give that database to other cemeteries, Black cemeteries. One of my volunteers is a retired chief technology officer. Yay. And so he's been very helpful with that. And so when we talk about digitizing records, all that is so important, because we want to tell the stories, and you guys have the opportunity to tell these rich stories. I mean, I can't wait until you're inviting young people to come to the cemetery. There's so much they could do. And then we had a program called Headstones in History. Even if they don't have a headstone, we still talking about them, right? And so those opportunities, particularly with the city, I think that those are a lot quicker than some of the bigger grants that you can apply for. And I would just encourage that. And then the last thing I would encourage is also to start an Instagram page for Woodlawn, because I found that I connected with the DC influencer who's like 20 years old. And all she did is had to post it one time. I had 200 people show up in Georgetown. Okay. And I've been trying to get people to do this and that, but she tells people what to do over the weekend and people showed up. So I'm just like, and since you can tell them stories about your your ancestors, it's a perfect platform. Perfect platform.
Great. This is Tony, and Lisa, just give a little clarification, because I want people to go away from here with a full understanding that when you ask for, first you need a grant writer who's willing to write grants for free. We have no money to pay anybody. Let's start there. But number two, that the grants are not necessarily for maintenance of the grass. The grant you're talking about is to collect data, it sounds like. Like, the oral history data. Did you get some grants to cut the grass?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
Well, we don't call it cut the grass, but it's called preservation.
That's what I'm looking for.
Because we're trying to preserve it so that we can put in cut the grass in that one. That's maintenance. You got to know how to,
No, but I'm not trying to say.
Make
give
the
me
words
those.
fit. And I can tell y'all, you got to get with your city council person. And they and harp on the fact, because let me tell you, things get done when you know people. And you know how to make noise. And this collaborative full of deltas and AKAs, y'all know how to make noise. We all got to make some noise. And that's why I'm like, we need to do it collectively, because we just can't keep leaving one behind. We ain't got but 4 in the city, okay? And it ain't but that big. Y'all are the biggest. Now, but we can make noise, and we can make noise together, because I'm a noise maker, as y'all know. And the ancestors aren't quiet right now. They're trying to erase us. Death reflects life. So ain't nothing, unfortunately. So I'm here. And I know Sharice has had her hand up.
Yes.
So I just want to acknowledge her.
Sharice, followed by Evangeline Hill.
Thank you so much. This forum is just fantastic. I'm taking copious notes. My question is for Ms. Antoinette White Richardson. You may not be aware, but the Fletcher Johnson landscape right there across the street from Woodlawn, which was formerly Payne, that has been a very controversial parcel of land for many, many years. I know that we, as a former ANC commissioner, in the Deanwood community, we all kind of rallied behind this Fletcher Johnson parcel. And my question is relative to the Payne Cemetery remains. My question is, how were all of the remains from Payne Cemetery moved to Harmony? It's been said that they were not. And that's what I was informed by one of our elders who passed last year in the Benning Ridge community. So there are a lot of other corresponding questions as a result of that, but I will talk with you about that offline. But I had to ask because that's been sort of a back and forth in the community. Some are saying it was, and then others are saying that all of the remains were not. Thank you.
I'm going to answer that for you, and please get in contact with me.
I will.
Okay. But I don't mind giving my phone number, but at this time, it's 202-570-6719. I have faith that everybody on this call has the same intent for Woodlawn as I do. So I will share my number. I wanted to do that. But I wanted to answer something that you asked and have some clarity and understanding. When they go to move bodies from a cemetery, there's more process now than you're talking about that existed 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. And And you're right. Some bodies did come to Woodlawn, and some bodies went to Harmony, and some bodies we have no idea where they went. There's a process they use for trying to contact descendants. When they don't answer, anything can take place. Sometimes they may not even get moved. Okay. But it was majority went to Harmony, but some of them, a few of them went to Woodlawn. And as you go through cemetery records, you'll find out that some of the bodies that were buried at Woodlawn got moved to other cemeteries out of the state. So all of that takes place. So that's another tricky, intricate situation about bodies when they're closing down cemeteries and where they end up. But you're absolutely, person told you right. All of them did not come to Woodlawn. Some of them, and I couldn't even begin to tell you without going through the records meticulously and looking to see who possibly could have come to Woodlawn. But the majority went to Harmony.
Thank you, Tony. Evangeline, followed by LT Helen, and that'll be our final question for this evening, and I'll turn it back over to Nicole.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to first of all say thank you to each of you who are doing such a yeoman's job when it comes to this. I'm Evangeline Premdas Hill, 5th generation African-American Washingtonian. You know, my people are holding it down in several different areas with Woodlawn, New Harmony, Lincoln Cemetery. I can hear my mother talking right now about the event it was to see the Old Harmony be dug up on Rhode Island Avenue, and never really quite sure where people went after that, meaning the ancestors. But so again, thank you. But I wanted to ask you about an article that was in the Washington Post, I believe, some time ago, recently, 5 years or so, about headstones that were found submerged in the Potomac. Can you all tell me where they think those were from, if you know, any one of you experts?
That's a
was on
Marjorie
that
Kennard question.
Yeah.
Marjorie?
I was on the committee that was where this was involved. And yes, those tombstones were taken and put in the Potomac River, and they were found flowing down the Potomac River. And I was brought in because I think it was our third national president whose tombstone was going down the river. And of course, they wanted to bring deltas, have a delta involved to identify and locate the family and all of that. So most of the bodies were interred into the New Harmony out there on Sheriff Road.
Right.
And so was a founder of ours who we thought had been just lost. We didn't know where she was. And it was because she did not have a family. She was not married. She had no children. Her parents had died. So when that happens and nobody claims you, they just dump you and just take you and put you all in a common grave. And so that's what happens a lot of times. And that's what happened to the people at Columbia Harmony. If they didn't have, that's why it's important that the descendant community stay connected to the cemetery, because then you'll at least know where your people are, or you can take them up and put them somewhere else where you want them to be. But yes, that's what happened.
So those headstones came from Columbia Harmony?
Yes, Columbia Harmony. And they also found some tombstones by a tree over by Home Depot. Because you know Home Depot is over there, and
where Columbia Harmony used to be.
Restaurants and all of that. And they found them just thrown by a tree years after that had happened. So we don't know who they got to do that excavation and all of that, they'd had total disregard for the cemetery headstones.
Mhm. And let me add
And the
to
bodies.
that, huh?
And the bodies,
Yeah,
yes.
because
So
they
now
only
Harmony,
removed
the
10%.
governor, I think
Virginia.
of Virginia has gotten together with that committee, and Harmony has allowed them a piece of land, and they're going to do a really nice memorial wall for all of those people who were brought over from Harmony, Columbia Harmony. They're going to have those people's names, so at least folk will know who their loved ones are.
Can I just add? So Virginia gave Maryland $5 million to take those markers that are from DC to Maryland. DC didn't do anything,
Right.
but show up for the picture. And
Mhm.
so the problem is there was a law, and them developers, and we know who the developers were. It was like the same developers who were doing all them cemeteries all around the city. And the law or something was something weird where, and maybe Omar can speak to it, where it was like you only had to take 10% of the bodies. There was nobody. A lot of people got buried in mass graves, and they sold
Mhm.
those markers to
Mhm.
shore up somebody's farm
That's right.
that was on the water.
Mhm.
And then they started floating down the river, you know.
That's right.
And when they saved our cemetery, the judge, when he reversed the order to developers had to actually remove bodies from our cemetery, they said, we did not want to be like Harmony. We didn't want this to end up like Harmony, because it was a big problem, and everybody knew it from day one. And it's so sad.
Mhm.
And I feel like, you know, DC, again, there are a number of cemeteries that do not look like cemeteries that were Black cemeteries, and there are people underneath there. And I know there are people underneath the Metro. I know, you know, all the former cemeteries. And there's a question I had in the chat. You all were in historic records that said you were 28 acres, but you're only 22 now. So what happened to them other acres? Because I couldn't find nothing that says sold, eminent domain, or anything. So I believe your housing around that cemetery is definitely, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they find bodies all the time in Georgetown, in people's backyards, in basements. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some folks on the other side of your fence.
That's
Well, I
right.
was going to say, Lisa, I agree with you to that extent. But we can't find that record. We can't find that trail. You know, it's been very hard to find that trail. But
That's
you're
where the
very
city
on
comes
point.
in.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, but you're very on point in saying that we wouldn't be surprised at all at the 5 acres. And one thing Lisa never pointed out, and she kind of pointed out, but didn't say exactly, what people need to understand, cemeteries are privately owned. So every time you bury somebody at a cemetery, you are buying a little piece of land, and that belongs to you and the descendants from that point going forward. So you either do something with it, or if you do nothing with it and something happens, then the government comes in and does something with it. And that was a little bit of the case, or quite a bit of the case, even with Harmony. Someone mentioned Paul Sluby. I saw it in the chat. I work at DC Public Library. Upstairs in our Washingtoniana division are the records of Paul Sluby in reference to cemeteries in this area. So that's somewhere you can also come and get some information. It's not a huge file, okay? But it is enough to give you some direction in reference to these cemeteries in the DC and the Black cemeteries. And he also talks about a few white cemeteries that no longer exist. So as far as this particular project and saying why we're talking about descendants of Woodlawn, I am 65 years old. I am here because my grandfather is buried there. And my mother, who was 12 years old when her father died, All she talked about during my coming up was her daddy was buried at Woodlawn. And for some reason, that stuck with me. And here I am today doing what I think I ought to do, should be doing in honor of them, is trying to keep this cemetery where it is, intact and available to the community. And I just hope all of you all that are descendants out there join me. I mean this very sincerely. Join me in doing this. And we're doing it through the collaborative, because that's our first outreach in the whole sisterhood and Greekdom world. But you don't have to be part of that to come join us. Okay? Because the Masons are also major players in keeping that cemetery.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
Margaret.
I
baby.
had one last question.
Yes,
Helen.
So I really so much to say after that beautiful statement from the sister. I just want to reiterate, give a little bit of an explanation to something very powerful that the younger sister said about they're trying to wipe us out. If they can get rid of the body that has had valuable information with the DNA that connects us directly to the enslavement, it is just so powerful. The technology that we have today will be nothing like what they'll have in 30 years that would be able to go back and to evaluate and be able to look at these poor enslaved individuals. We have to do everything that we can to protect that land as if it were they were alive and walking around and someone was trying to come and enslave them again. I want to applaud you all for what you're doing, your outreach, to what you're doing there. I'm here. I'm going to give the young lady my telephone number, let me know what day to come in and volunteer. You're just going to have to tell me what to do exactly because I'm not really an outdoorsy person. But the other question I have too is about are there places inside Woodlawn Cemetery that are not marked? For example, is there, as we are doing the cleanup and the continuing rebuilding of this cemetery to bring it back to its original luster, is there a chance that we could find unmarked graves? And thank you for your time. I'll wait for your answer.
I
You
think
want
the
me to answer
question
that,
was
Raven?
unmarked graves.
Yeah.
Unmarked graves. Yeah,
Yes.
go on, Tony.
There are unmarked graves. And there are marked graves. But I can tell you the diagram map that we have looked at, and we've had the help of a funeral home to help us look at that map. Even they said, the map we have does not represent what we're seeing. So, but they're still there. They have not moved, whether they're under 5 tons of dirt, marked or unmarked, they're still there. I know they have not been moved, at least at 22 acres worth.
That's right.
Thank you, Tony. And thanks to everyone for your wonderful questions, your comments. We hope to see you at some of our cleanups this spring and hope that you will join us in advocating for Woodlawn. At this time, I will turn it over to my Delta Sister President, Nicole.
Thank you. We're almost at the end of this discussion that should be the first of many. So I can't stand here. As you can see, there is passion that is here from those volunteers. Like, people are working on this issue because of the commitment to the community, the commitment to our history, and this is something we should do. So when you walk away from here thinking about what can I do, it is the volunteer. It's to get the word out, the awareness that this issue is happening throughout the country, and that we need to make sure that we are preserving the spaces where our history lies. And then it's also about making sure that we get those dollars and we help these organizations band together so that we're always there. I wanted to just thank, the Woodlawn Perpetual Care. As he said, they are volunteers who do a yeoman's amount of work for this city. So wearing double hats Antoinette Wright Richardson, she wears like 15 hats, so not just 3 or 4, but she's always in something, making sure that our communities are better. To our collaborative, this started as a small project that has grown and grown under Sarah Kennard and others in the chapters and our AK sisters and everyone that came around that just said there's a problem. And the one thing with this is whenever you find someone and you tell them that this is happening, they always come and say, what can I do? And so we just have to keep telling people, we have to keep consistently being there and realize that this is not something that we can solve alone, but we can solve it. And then finally, as we all have family members, it is our responsibility to take care of our family when they pass, to make sure that where you send, where they are, that you're participating, because that's right there. I think we heard earlier that if you don't answer the phone, then that descendant becomes just a number. They can do whatever they want. So remembering that we do have a responsibility to our family members. Many of us think it's just, oh, the bodies, it's just a place where the body lies, but it's more than that. I want to let you know that there is in the chat, there's a place for you to put some information in. I want to make sure that there's a bunch of resources that are in there that have been, Mr. Omar has been putting lots and lots of great things in there. So make sure that you download, you read, you educate. And then I'm going to leave the closing remarks anymore to Ms. Carnard, who will wrap us up. And hopefully the next time we have here, we had 100+ people on here. So I just am excited that this conversation has happened. And I know that this will be the first of many. So thank you for taking time tonight. Thank you for our guests. Thank you for sharing your gifts and talents. And Sarah Kennard, it's over to you to wrap us up.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been a dream come true. You don't know how we have labored and prayed and hoped and dreamed about this night. And to have you here with us is just means more to us than you can imagine. I'd like for you to know that the president of the Woodlawn Cemetery Perpetual Care Association, president, Mr. Leander Moore, has been ill. He's in the hospital, but he is on the call. He is listening. And since we are recording this, I'm hoping that he will be able to see this at some later date. I also want you, when you can, to send us pictures of your ancestors, because we want to be able to put a face with the name. Please send us, those of you on this Zoom, send us the name of your ancestor and a picture of your ancestor, because we want to be able to continue to do that. And sometimes at Black History Month, I know if you would go to my page on Facebook, every day during Black History Month, I have a different ancestor who is buried at Woodlawn and information about that person. And we would like to continue doing that each year. I want to thank you again. I'm thrilled that you were here. And I just want to say good night, God bless, good luck. Thank you.
Thank
This
you.
was wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Technology, can you move us to the